Blackwell, Alderman DeLibero. From what I can see, there are 13 present and 1 absent.
Okay, I declare quorum. So we'll start with the public hearing on the proposed budget for 2020-21. There's a couple notes. Please limit your questions or comments to the budget. Please identify yourself for the public record, name and address, so that Trish can get that. And as always, try to limit your comments. Try not to keep track of the time, but try to be respectful of any others that like to speak. We'll start by looking at the hands that pop up, digital hands. We'll go with other hands, and then free for all, I guess, after that point. Try to get everybody who would like to speak. So would anyone like to speak on the budget? Raise your hands and we'll look around here. Okay, we got a hand here. John, am I the host?
John showing as the host.
I am right now. I am the host, but they could unmute at will, so there's nothing no
Okay.
restriction on there.
We have one, Matt, you're up. You can unmute yourself, I believe.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Matt McGowan at 40 Winter Street. I think with the budget, we should be listening to what the rest of the nation's doing as far as police budgets are concerned. We should be looking forward to as well as a city, because we need to remain competitive as a city and remember that. So if there's other cities who are already reallocating some funds from their police departments to education and more affordable housing, I think we should be following suit. Bridgeport, New Haven, and Hartford are already looking at that and having pretty good talks about it. I also believe that we should probably not have salaries increase this year, seeing how, you know, COVID-19 is probably going to have a second swing around. That's about it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on the budget tonight? Please raise your digital hand if possible. Anyone else want to speak that's here that can raise their hand? Anyone else want to comment on the budget? John, can we unmute the call-in ones to make sure that someone's not trying to talk?
I certainly could. Nothing, there is no forced mute, so everyone should be able to mute and unmute themselves.
Okay.
I could unmute everybody, but this will result in some people who may not want to be unmuted being unmuted.
Be a disaster.
That's likely a little bit of a Pandora's box. I'm not really sure what would happen, you know. Some people may scramble to remute themselves. But no one's been forced, and no one's forced mute though. No one's no one was prevented from unmuting. Matt McGowan may have his hand up again.
Matt,
is your hand up again, or did we just not lower it?
No, it's up again. I mean, if nobody else is going to go, I have some more stuff regarding the budget.
Okay.
So there's been probably at least 13 internationally recognized studies, not including any studies done in the US, related to crime and the rate of education per capita related to crime. So basically saying the better the education system, the less likely crime is. So lowering and not meeting our education budget right now kind of seems we're setting our youth up to fail, at least according to these 13 studies. Once again, not including studies done in the US. There are hundreds done upon different cities and towns in the US. So I think it's imperative that we try to match the budget, the education budget, as best as possible. And there are, once again, a few line items I could recommend easily to transfer over to the education budget. And that'll be about it.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on the budget tonight?
Terrible speaking.
Second call. Anyone like to speak tonight on the budget? We will be discussing this later in the meeting as well when we consider the full budget. So the alderman will take this into consideration. Looking around for hands. Last and final call for comments on the budget. All right, so we'll close out the public hearing portion, and we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is item number 4, municipal reports. So this stuff was all in your packet, and we'll come back to the budget here in a few minutes. So we have vote recommendations from the June 1st, 2020 vote meeting. You guys can speak at this point. Anybody?
Move to accept.
Move to accept by Alderman Cassetti.
Is this the final opportunity for discussion on the budget, or is this just the recommendation from vote?
No, this is the vote. This is the vote report for the month. This has nothing.
Oh, okay, sorry.
This is item number 4 on the agenda. We'll be talking about the budget in item 6.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Do we have a second on the vote?
Second.
Second by Alderman Roslin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any opposed? Nope. Okay. All right, so that's good. We have the land use report, which is item 4B.
I'll make a motion to accept the land use report.
I'll second.
By Roslin, second by Cassetti. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Bill, are you opposed, or were you just late raising your hand? Oh, he's muted. Oh, thumbs up. Okay. Sorry. Right, so thank you on that. And moving on, we have the tax collector report, item number 5. Request for refunds.
I'll make a motion.
I have a question on that one,
Sure.
Josh.
Yep.
And it's just, I just don't understand it. There was a comment, total monthly revenue collected by bill type. And in May of 2020, it has a note over on the side there, COVID-19 effects on collection. But I was having trouble seeing what effect it had. According to the numbers, they appear to be somewhat in line. I was just confused by the statement.
Yeah, they do appear to be in line with the previous 2 years.
And so I don't know what that COVID thing said. I don't know if there's anybody here from finance or tax.
Is Kim or Rich here? Or actually, sorry, Johanna, she here? Let's see, I'm not seeing her.
Hey, Josh, this may have some sort of impact on the deferment that we offered.
Oh,
I'm not quite sure if she just wanted it noted on record that, there were effects that we did put, in fact, the 2 portions, not only the 3-month deferral, but as well as the decreased rate that we put in there. It may be noted for that reason.
yeah, I think you may be right because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at our last meeting, it was stated that they haven't been looked at. They're going to look at them all in one batch, right? When the deadline hits. So that could just be accounting for that if, but to Bill's point, it looks like those numbers are pretty close to previous year.
Yeah.
Because they're higher than they were the
Just
previous.
an observation. I've got no complaint. We'll take the money.
Oh, yeah. All right. Motion to accept the tax report.
Good move.
Second.
Yep, second by Stroman. All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. All right, so now we move on to item number 6, consideration and approval of the 2020-2021 city budget.
No. Oh, sorry.
So we received in our packets the revised version after the Board of Aldermen subcommittee met, and it's still at a 0% mill increase. And Tony, do you want to speak on that on behalf of the committee? Or
Yeah, I will, Josh. So I just want to say, there were many hours that went into this budget, even before it arrived to BOAT and the Alderman Finance Committee. So thank you to the mayor, all the department heads that were involved, Rich, Kim, the whole finance team, anyone else involved in the process too, thank you for all the hours put into this. Additionally, there were a slew of hours that were put in from both the Board of Apportionment and Taxation, as well as the Alderman Finance team. So thank you everybody for that. We further, I think, fine-tuned the bottom line to maintain, all the critical services for both the city as well as, education, and we did that while holding the bottom line for the taxpayers, during the pandemic. So, I think it's a win-win-win kind of all around for everyone. There were, Josh, as you mentioned, the budget itself results in no tax increase, no mill increase. That's something that the mayor strongly, his message was about as he put this budget out. And it was something, that we obviously heard the mayor on, and as well as heard the taxpayers that, we just, now wasn't the time, obviously, to raise taxes. There's never a good time to raise taxes, but, this especially was a time that, did not result in a tax increase. So with that, everybody is aware of the budget that BOAT passed over to the Board of Aldermen. There are 3 changes that I did recommend, restoring both the Boys and Girls Club budget to $5,700, removed $5,000 from the sports contingency, and the balance of that $2,300 was moving back to the fund balance. So before we start, I need to make a motion to accept those changes to the BOAT budget so that the Alderman can use that as a starting point for the budget discussion.
Second.
motion by Mammone, second by Rivers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so great. And these were the same items you mentioned at the tail end of our last meeting, correct?
They were, yeah. It was the restoring the Boys and Girls Club line item, removing $5,000 from the sports contingent, and then the balance of that moving to the fund balance. Rich is on, correct? Rich, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So I received the backup that you had sent over, and it looks like the balance of that went to the BOAT contingency. Was that supposed to go there or to the fund balance?
I thought you wanted me to put it into the boat contingency line.
No, it should
Fund
have went
balance.
back. It should have went to the fund balance.
As a reduction in fund balance as income, or
Yes. It's a credit coming back. It's an over. So
Tony, you're saying restoration to Boys and Girls Club or to team?
team was restored already from the Board of Apportionment and Taxation. This was putting the funds back to the Boys and Girls Club line.
You said 2,500?
It was the budget last year, I believe, was 5,666. I restored it again just to keep it nice and even, 5,700.
Gotcha.
Then team, I have that too, Tarek, if you hold a sec. I think that was one that Boat made. They increased team from 3,000 back to 5,000 in the previous. So that was in the original pass that they sent to us.
Right. Thanks.
All right, so so now we're all on the same page as far as the what the budget looks like with those modifications. Do we want to? Is there further discussion? Or do we want to make a motion to accept and discuss?
1 minute, please.
Tony, do we need another motion to take the money from vote contingency now to return it to the fund balance? Or do we just do that?
Can I make the suggestion we just leave it in the boat contingency? The net effect is very minor for the $2,300, and ultimately any residual in that line item would fall to the bottom anyway.
Okay, so I'll make a second motion, if you will, to modify the previous motion to move the 2,300 previously stated to the fund balance to move to the boat contingency line, 2,300.
Second.
Motion by Mammone, second by Rivers. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. So now we're back to where we were.
That should be exactly the format that you received the 43-page budget in. Those numbers have all been included in
Correct.
there under the Board of Aldermen lines.
Okay.
So a point of discussion on the budget.
Go ahead, Derek.
Thanks. So I'm going to take a few minutes here to read a statement letter that it's addressed to the other members of the board. So bear with me. Dear fellow members of the Board of Aldermen, I would like to thank both BOAT and the Board of Aldermen Finance Committee members for their courtesy and respect throughout this process. Having participated in the Board of Aldermen's Finance Committee and attended every BOAT meeting during this year's budget process, I regret to inform you that I cannot support this budget as presented by BOAT for the following reasons. Number one is process and due diligence. Residents expect their officials to take the budgeting process seriously and carry out extensive due diligence and planning in the process. I believe that Ansonia's process has been severely lacking in the following areas. Insufficient timing. Most municipalities get a draft of their budget to their Board of Finance or equivalent board or commission by February, allowing ample time for meetings with department heads, reviewing department commentary, and troubleshooting potential operational department efficiencies collaboratively that could help provide real achievable cost savings. For the third year in a row, the mayor's office has delivered their budget in April or later, and accordingly, we've not been able to carry out any of the above mentioned process. There's a lack of department information. In order for the deliberation, due diligence, and recommendations of the board to be relevant, it must be informed by the departments. Apparently, the comptroller receives a written department commentary that is submitted along with the budget request. When I asked about receiving the commentary, I was told that there wasn't enough time for the comptroller to share it. Not only does that explanation make no sense, as this should be a simple forwarded email, it also highlights the main problem regarding timing limitations. Written commentary would be the bare minimum information needed to make an informed recommendation. Preferably, a detailed budget analysis of each department with live director workshops is what's needed. Ultimately, with what we've been provided, the BOA or BOAT has less information than the mayor's office and accordingly could not possibly have anything to add other than uninformed personal priorities. Without additional information, the dozen or so hours of deliberation spent by BOAT and BOA Finance amounted to arbitrary line item adjustments to reverse engineer a no mill rate increase. Combined meetings. Combined meetings with BOAT and BOA have their obvious advantages. They were civil, but they were somewhat chaotic. Often meetings were run without a clear understanding of who was running them, and there were no opportunities for BOA members to deliberate and raise issues independently from BOAT for our consideration. Number 2 is the unrealistic budget. The purpose of a budget is to help the city's executives and directors plan for reality. In Ansonia's budget process, it appeared that the top priority was to cast aside reality and shift numbers as needed to create a budget with a no mill rate increase. I support a no mill rate increase for this budget, but it must be grounded in reality. I think number 1 issue is the collection rate. Every municipality that I know of, led by Republicans and Democrats, is forecasting a reduction in their ability to collect taxes this year as a result of COVID-related economic hardships. Ansonia is proposing an increase in the collection rate. Why? Because, and it was stated openly in our meeting, that this is what was needed in order to achieve a no mill rate increase in the budget. We have to do better than that. Number 3 is priority and no bid contracts. One of the biggest line item increases in this year's budget goes to our garbage contract, which remains an emergency no bid contract since 2016, when the mayor unilaterally broke contract with Winters Brothers. Firing of Winter Brothers resulted in a lawsuit in which the city settled in exchange for awarding another no bid contract to Winters Brothers for our recycling under their new company name, Oak Ridge. Now our recycling contract is predicted to more than double in this budget. While we know recycling costs have increased significantly, we have become far too comfortable awarding no bid contracts, which seem even more egregious when we're looking at 25 to 100% increases in those contract prices. This is unacceptable, but sadly, we were not granted enough time in this process to go out to bid. Funding for questionable city hall positions. Several years ago, the Board of Aldermen voted to eliminate the city's constituent services role, a position that gets paid $30,000 per year for largely serving a PR function for the mayor's office. When the position was eliminated, the mayor immediately added it back, stating that he would find the money from his own mayor's office budget, which never made sense because it all comes from the same pot. But the rationale for keeping this position in a budget as tight as this one is even harder to justify, especially when all of the recreation programs combined are receiving far less than this one role. Another role that remains funded is the event coordinator, which makes little sense in the time of COVID, and we have a volunteer cultural commission, which we should ask to carry out this function. Eliminating these 2 positions would give us back $36,000. I'd like to finish by saying that I'm not in favor of a mill rate increase for this budget. I believe that the tax collection rate should be adjusted to the 5-year historic average, if not lower due to COVID, and that if there's not enough tax revenue to accommodate the mayor's suggested expenditures, an additional money will need to be budgeted from the fund balance to accurately reflect the most likely scenario. Other recommendations I would make is the elimination of the constituent services and event coordinator position from the mayor's office this year. I believe if given a proper amount of time and information, this board could have found substantially more savings in this budget to avoid a mill rate increase or drawing on the fund balance. But we were not provided that opportunity. Additionally, managing expenses can only go so far to balancing a budget. If the expectation is that the city should never incur a mill rate increase, then we need substantially greater economic growth. My recommendation is that going forward, the Board of Aldermen work collectively to hold the mayor's office accountable to providing a budget in February to allow a proper process to occur. Finally, thank you all again for your hard work and consideration.
Thanks.
Can I just ask 2 questions to that, or a couple questions to that?
Sure.
So, Tarek, were you on the Board of Aldermen Finance Committee?
Yes.
Did you participate in the meetings that we had?
Yes.
Did you at any time ask for an additional session outside of the boat sessions to meet?
It was never extended from the chair of the commission that opportunity was there.
You could have suggested it as you're suggesting now, but you chose not to. All right.
Somewhat limited in a 6-week period.
Yeah, we made it happen though. Just another question. Previously, we just talked about taxes being somewhat stable on the report. I believe Mr. Phipps commented that even during the pandemic, things are kind of good. The tax revenues coming in. So to say that the funds or the number is unrealistic, or the tax collection number is unrealistic during a pandemic, knowing that we looked at those figures pretty extensively, and to suggest the 5-year average just doesn't make sense. Historically that number is increasing. The collection rate is increasing year over year. Rich even provided to you address level property tax level, asset level type information to you that showed those lines to tie them back, which again, tied back to the collection rate increasing year over year over year. So to suggest that number is unrealistic might, again, based on the substantiation and the numbers provided, I don't believe is an accurate depiction using a 5-year average to do that.
Yeah.
And then lastly,
if I can respond.
go ahead.
So one is I appreciate, I wish it would have been stated in the beginning that any member of that committee could make a request. I think that's part of the challenge when you combine BOAT and Board of Aldermen, that we don't even know, do we even make motions in those formats? It's not even clear. And I think no matter what, I think you need more than 6 weeks to carry out a process of which I just outlined, where you're actually having live deliberations and workshops with department heads to look at real operational efficiency opportunities, which would go into much more detail and require much more time than was allotted. To the point of the collection rate, I think if you can name like another municipality that's forecasting an increase in their collection rate this year, I think, or at least, a few that would be comparable to the economy of Ansonia, I think that would give a great amount of confidence, to say that, we're not alone in this forecast. But I would say, yes, you would expect collections to increase in good expanding economy. That's not what we're experiencing this year. We have unprecedented levels of unemployment since the Great Depression. I think if anything, we should look back to 2008 even and 2009 to look at what our collections rate were in those years, and probably use that as a caveat to say, along with a 5-year historic average, this is what we should be considering. So I think those are the two, on the collection rate, it's very important. And ultimately it's all going to come from the same pot, but it's what we're trying to do here is to present a prediction as close as possible to the reality of what we're facing.
Right, and I think using some of the current numbers as well as the projections based on the programs we're doing is a lot more accurate than using a 5-year historical average. And the variability across another municipality, you have 2 different tax collectors. Their methods in which to collect are totally different. The amount of leeway that she has to do that tax collection and what's forgiven could be totally different. So you have to look at all of that if you're going to look at another municipality. It's not just, hey, look what they're doing, they're comparable to us. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not something as simple as, well, they're doing it, let's do it too. And I think the numbers that are coming in now, past performance doesn't dictate that future, kind of, the future findings, so to speak. So that using that 5-year average, again, doesn't get you, I would say, as clean a number as using your actuals now, which are a real depiction of what's happening in your tax office today.
Yeah, I think we, as the board, should recognize, that if we are standing alone as a municipality in this increase in the collection rate, that we should just know that we're an outlier in that set. We've obviously got some special sauce in our city hall. We should probably be running training sessions for the other municipalities and cashing in on that, if that's the case. But that's, that's a significant, that these are significant dollars that we're talking about here. Small adjustments to the collection rate translate into big changes in taxes collected, which we may not be prepared for if the collection rate is significantly lower than what we're forecasting. And I just watched a pretty interesting video from Aaron Stewart in New Britain, and very clear about the expectations that collection rates are going to drop across the board this year, and that they had to make necessary adjustments for that. That's a Republican mayor. So I think we should really sort of think very clearly as a board about what we're forecasting here.
Mr. President?
Yes, Charlie?
May I speak?
And Bill, you're on deck. I saw you.
Okay, no problem.
All right. Go ahead, Charlie.
Tarek, were you at last meeting? I don't remember seeing you there.
Oh yeah, I was at every meeting.
You were at the last meeting with BOAT and the Finance Committee?
You bet.
Okay, well, I don't remember you there at all. And there was plenty of time at that meeting to discuss the public works and trash and all of that. And I didn't hear you make any real complaints then. I mean, we have, the last two meetings were filled with ideas of how to cut the budget or try to find areas where we could cut the budget, and you didn't participate in my eyes like the rest of the group did. I mean, there was heated discussion, and to me, it's easy to come from behind and make complaints after something's finished. You know, you had that opportunity, and we also discussed at the last meeting possibly having another meeting, just the finance committee, to discuss the budget more, and everybody said no, they heard enough. So I don't know why you got to come from behind and give us suggestions of what to do after the fact when you were there and you had plenty of opportunities to say your piece. So
Would you like a response, Charlie?
I think you're wasting your time. I mean, what I said is true. You had the opportunity at the last two meetings to force us to do some more deliberation with departments or whatever, and you chose. I mean, you were quiet. I didn't even think you were at the last meeting. So I
don't have the same ability to wind out the clock like you do, Charlie. But you can go back to the notes in the minutes, and you can see that I attended every single meeting and that I spoke up at every single meeting. And when you disrespectfully prompted me to contribute additionally because you felt like you had the authority to command a response, I did provide a response. And I'll retract my previous statement.
Tony,
everybody else is respectful in this process.
Did you give everyone an opportunity?
The one person, Charlie, that's
Tarek got the floor. Tarek got the floor.
Hey, Joe, you weren't even at the meetings because you were sick.
I was at the last meeting, Charlie. So there you go. You're wrong on two, Charlie. Charlie, you're wrong twice. I was at the last meeting, and I was sick. I was at the last meeting. All right,
Joe.
You're wrong twice now.
One person
at a time, please.
I'd like to respond to Charlie's comments. Not only have I routinely presented opportunities in this extremely limited time period with absolutely no commentary or department information other from a verbal account from Public Works, which changed dramatically over the course of one week, where we had director of Public Works stating that we were almost $1 million short in what we were forecasting, and then coming back to the next meeting and saying that, well, no, we were actually on budget. I mean, these are not the ways in which we can properly discern between millions of dollars, a $60 million budget. We need proper financial analysis. We need proper time, like the city's charter stipulates that we should be receiving these things back in February, like every other municipality that does it. But no, we're supposed to consolidate our conversation blindly. Yeah, you know, we can sit there and say, oh, should it go up or should it go down? We need to get to a 0% mill rate increase. That's totally, you know, we need to get into the weeds with these departments to understand whether or not we have anything to contribute from a management perspective in terms of how they're operating the departments and whether there's real, actionable, achievable savings that are possible. None of that took place in this process.
Bill? Bill, you're up.
Thank you. I just unmuted myself. I have some questions on the budget, believe it or not. Probably Richie would have to answer them. In a number of places, there's highlighted items. Page 34, pension and public works, and $4,000 on page 27, dues and subscriptions. $974,000, if that's right, on page 25 for MRF. And I was just wondering what the significance of those highlights are, or is there significance?
Bill, I'm looking at it now. Give me 1 second. But what I believe they are, those are calculated items that are done off that one page, so that Social Security, if I change any one of the wage lines, that number will automatically reflect that change. Pension is another calculation done the same way. If any of the pensionable people, the numbers go up or down, then the pension calculation number goes up. And I highlighted those so that I wouldn't override them because there's a special formula in the spreadsheet that does that calculation for me.
Understood. Okay, I got another question on the capital capital expenditures. There's only $15,000 for the fire marshal's truck. How come? I think it's all the way next to the last page or something.
You're right. It's on the last page, I think.
That's too much for a lease. Can't be a lease.
Yeah, on page 42. Two cop cars for 90,000 and fire marshal's car for 15.
Okay, yeah, those are the two capital items.
They were discussed at those meetings, the items that you're bringing up.
Bill wasn't there at those, Charlie.
Well, I wasn't allowed. I was a fly on the wall until until the banter drove me to my bed. But the $15,000 for a fire marshal's vehicle ain't gonna buy much.
That's set up to go for a 3-year lease.
Uh-huh.
So 15,000 for the lease payment per year over 3 years is I think the truck is about 37,000 and the light sirens and all of the decals and stuff like that is about 8, and it's all conclusive into about a $45,000 total purchase.
Yeah, no, okay. It was just sort of confusing when you put it as a lease thing. So for the next 2 years after this, there's going to be 15,000 in there or something.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. And what else did I have? Fire marshal's car. Trash contracts. Those are big numbers. I think Tarek alluded to it. Is that a done deal? Or can we ask the powers that be, I guess it's us, to put them out to contract bid? I don't know where that stands, but it's just concerning that it's a big number.
It's not eluded though, Bill. I mean, we brought that subject up ad nauseum. And there is, and if you ask Mr. Marini, I think they're getting ready to have a bid process with our trash.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, this isn't like we never talked. I would like to think that we didn't talk about this, but we did.
No,
Never mind the years of the Public Works Commission that we try to figure out how to save money every year, 1 year after another.
Yeah,
and anything we find, we share with the whole group. I mean, and in the minutes, we brought up a water tank. We brought up the gas saving money on gasoline. We brought up a lot of stuff with Public Works. The Public Works Commissioner director was there through this process. I mean, nothing was hidden.
No, I'm not saying it was. I'm just saying it's a hell of a big number to hit you right in the puss when you see it.
It
and
is.
So you ask a question, are we playing by the rules or have we got some favoritism going on? You know, because we had a lawsuit settled and all of a sudden these people are still on board. And
well, there's no contract, Mr. Phipps. There's currently no contract there. It's I think Tarek had said it's kind of just a no risk, free for all at this point. Once the bid goes out, and we'll be able to do that. That's why the price went. The requested from Public Works was the $950, and there's an adjusted side from the mayor as well as Bo and the alderman to bring it back to $800 due to where that new contract should settle us.
Yeah, it looks like you're factoring in a 5% increase.
Was that part of the lawsuit settlement by any chance? To hire them at that rate?
Hire who? Trash? There's no contract for trash right now.
Yeah, but was that part of the lawsuit settlement that they had to get the job?
No, absolutely.
No, okay. I was just curious because I'm confused there too, but you know, it's been explained, so thank you.
That was for
And then-
recycling only, Joe.
Oh, okay, all right.
So
The other
The
one-
only other
The other one's up,
comment,
going to be go for bid. Go ahead.
the only other comments that I have, I guess, pretty much reflect what Tarek said too. It seems like we're so fixated with no tax increase that we sort of back into a budget, always looking at not increasing taxes. And I'm wondering if sometimes we miss something with that fixation. But nonetheless, the biggest problem that I've had personally, and it's troubled me actually when I was running for office, that's what I used to tell the people that that managed to answer the door when I knocked on it. And you know, open government, obviously that's what we all strive for, and play by the rules. The rules are there for a reason, but for some reason, 3 years running, we have patently, almost intentionally ignored the budget process. And we come up with ideas, run it ourselves, this combined boat board thing. That's something new. That can have its pluses and minuses. You can have you can expedite time and save people time, but you can also intimidate time. It's supposedly a boat procedure, but I got the impression that Tony was running the operation and Boat was just there to listen. And that sort of is topsy-turvy. And the last 3 years we've ignored
all of the budget process.
All right, Bill,
So
was,
that
Bill had the
no
floor.
elected
Bill had the
officials,
floor.
no elected officials had a say in the budget. It was done completely by vote.
You'll get your chance, Charlie. You'll get your chance to talk. Bill was in the middle of saying something.
Yeah,
I've saved him
go
from
look it
getting
up, Charlie,
many
and read it.
times.
It's
When he's
very
accusing
clear.
us of something,
One at a
I'm not
time
going
here.
to sit here and
One at a
take it.
time. One at a time.
I'm not going to sit here and take that. Your accusations are wrong because
Order.
you don't have enough information because you
Order.
weren't at all.
Point of order.
I'd like to finish, and then I'll mute myself, and we'll let Charlie run off the way he likes to run off. But I have the floor, and I'd like to keep it.
The truth.
And do we have to get our duct tape out, Charlie, or are you going to be a
You
good
can't
boy?
reach me from where you are.
Listen, we've ignored the budget 3 years in a row. You don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to read it if you look it up. It's the budget that the Cassetti administration put in there. That's the terrible part, and they have not gone by it. And in fact, the first year, they pull a fast one with reevaluation, and a lot of people got hammered with tax increases. Up on the Hill, I think, in the 6th and 7th Ward was a lot of them. And that was dishonest, plain and simple. But
Here you go again.
I
You're
did
back.
my part, and I got a shrug.
I mean,
I got a
we've
shrug.
heard enough allegations about, everything. Can we just stay on this year's budget, please?
That's what we're talking
I'm
about.
just making a point that hopefully, as we go forward, we'll start playing by the rules. Follow the charter.
There you go again. You just
With all
said we
due
don't
respect,
respect
Bill, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So
Listen.
I'm not really sure that.
Pandemic's got nothing to do with nothing right now unless we're sick.
Would anyone like to speak?
Tell that to the
In
governor.
order.
Yes, I do. I do.
I'd like to speak before I had my hand up. I don't know if you saw it, but here it was. I just wanted to say I've spent enough time walking around talking to neighbors. I went out with the mayor during the campaign. You guys all got the same exact response when you went around. 99% of the people that you talk to say, please, dear God, don't raise our taxes.
That's right.
Anything you do, don't raise our taxes. That's what they tell us. And that's why the mayor has been laser focused his entire time in office to not raise the taxes at any cost. And I just want to thank the committee that I helped put together, the finance committee, you guys, 7 of you that I thought did a great job in keeping that promise. And the other thing I'll say is that there's a couple times it's been mentioned that it's like budgeting in the dark. And I will say that I've visited my complimentary presidential parking spot at City Hall enough to know that the mayor has weekly meetings with all the department heads. And so he's talking to them not only during the budget season, but throughout the year. So I don't know if you want to do like a 12-month budget process, but there are conversations going on and it's not in the dark. They know, those department heads know what's going on, and the mayor's staff knows what's going on. And by the time it gets filtered down to you, it's a pretty well-oiled machine and a pretty finished product. And I think you guys had more than enough time to work through it. And I just want to say that I'm very proud of the team that did work together on that. So thank you. Diane?
Josh, I just wanted to make just one comment. Well, I have a lot of things I want to say, but just one comment about the budgeting process. I'm not so sure every department head had that meeting or had the discussion. And I'm just going to tell you, because I spoke to a department head and they didn't even know the budget was out when the budget was out. It was a budget cut to the department. They did not know that there was a budget cut to the department. So there may be discussions that go on, but I'm not so sure that there's actual sit down. Let's talk about what your wish list is versus what the reality is and what we're able to do. I just want to make that comment because they were surprised when I talked to them about the budget. So I'm just saying, I'm not sure every department, some might, I'm not saying every department actually sat down and talked about their actual budgets. I'm just bringing you that because that's what was told to me. But I have, through this process, I do have a lot of questions to ask. And I was one of the aldermen who's not on the finance committee that did attend the meetings, so I could hear what was going on and I could become knowledgeable. I did interject a couple of times, which I probably was not in a proper order for me to do. But there were questions that I would have asked at the meeting, but not being a part of the meeting, could not do so. Wanted to know if it's appropriate for me to ask those questions now. And one of the concerns I have is the fact that in a lot of the line items, what the department is, this is revenue, what the department is stating that they would want for revenue, what they're saying that they're going to project for revenue, I call it a projection, that what they're projecting for revenue is different than the number that's in the mayor's budget and what was approved by both and the Board of Aldermen committee, which concerns me because if it's my budget, I would feel that I'm responsible for bringing in that revenue. Then am I committed to bringing in that amount that I'm being told that I'm able to do? Is that really is that a real number that I may be able to obtain or to achieve? I do budgets all the time. I've done budgets over 30, 40 years. So whenever I did a budget, it was my budget. And especially if I had to bring revenue in, and I knew I was responsible for that revenue. But now if I'm putting in a number of 40,000, the mayor puts in a number of 60, then, ooh, can I achieve that? The other thing is the accountability for that. If we're saying that we're not going to change the mill rate, and we want to, and it has to do with the revenue that we're bringing in, it's going to make the big difference for us. There has to be a level of accountability that maybe quarterly, there's a meeting that's with the departments, and I don't know if this happens with the departments, to see where they are at that given time, early enough on, so that they're not going to achieve that revenue, then at least that's when they're told they have to hold their expense, their spending, to be able to achieve that, versus going back to vote and saying, I don't have enough money, so I need money out to contingency fund. I need money out to contingency fund. I think Tony talked about that at one of the meetings, that we have to hold people accountable to their budgets. But if they're not the ones that are committing to the revenue, it's being committed by others to make the budget. I'm just a little concerned about that. So that's a statement. And that's where some of my questions were on some of the line items that I was looking at.
Diane, can I make a quick comment on that? I'm sorry, so this year, especially with, all the stuff happening with COVID and everything else, there was a discretionary spending freeze that was implemented by the mayor. So all of, essential POs or purchase orders that were cut were denied, just simply because, the revenue wasn't coming in. And again, as you said, if the revenue's not coming in, you can't keep spending the money. So that's where the whole discretionary spending freeze came from. So I do agree. Yes, it does need to be, I think somebody said quarterly. No, it almost needs to be a daily, if not a monthly process where you are reforecasting over your budget to see, okay, how did I do last month? Where am I? That piece needs to happen, and there needs to be accountability for it, which is something I've said from day one since I've been in this spot.
And who has that level? And I think then, in addition to that, I believe that when it does that, that there's a ongoing meeting with the BOA Finance Committee to see where they are as well. So I don't know what happens now. Once you have done the budget, I don't know how often the Finance Committee meets. Now, let me just give you an example. And if you look at the page, I call it page 1 that we received, and we talk about permits, this is an example. The department request said $218,500. The mayor's budget, and it was also approved by vote in the BOE, says $468,500, which made a difference of what, about $257,000. So if the department is saying, this is what I'm projecting our permits to be, but then we have the mayor's budget saying, well, no, I'm putting in 400,000. Who's going to be accountable for that? Is the department okay with that? That's one of the examples.
So if Diane, again, I hate to interrupt you, and I'm really sorry for doing that. If you look at the permits line, it's page 8 of the budget, page 8 of the document itself too. Most of that is the blight fees. And if you look at the actuals on the blight fees, the request, the department request is usually 150 in terms of revenue. Okay. 17-18 actual was 324. 18-19 was 159. This year, the year's not even over yet. They had encumbered through the end of April, 618,000. So again, talking about that realistic nature of where blight fees are. And again, we always say, we're not doing it to blight people, and we want properties cleaned up in lieu of the fees and things like that. Unfortunately, fees do come around as a revenue line for us. So to say 150 is realistic, people might actually kick it into neutral and just coast. That's unfortunately not something you want from a revenue producer. If it has to be aggressive to be attainable, I think we should, it should be aggressive. If we don't collect these, properties look like, trash. Based on the amount of blight complaints I've received in the past week, something's going on up in, off of Highland. There's a whole bunch of blight calls for that. But, that was the strict nature behind why that increased $250,000.
So why then wouldn't the department put that in?
That's a question for the department itself, I would say.
See, that's what I'm getting at. I'm just saying, who's accountable? So is there to be somebody accountable to that? But maybe if they have the monthly meetings, maybe then that will help do it. Just that's a big difference.
I agree.
I was gonna say, it's worth noting that there's a difference between department requests and then where this budget ended up going. If we granted what every department had said they wanted, we're looking at a mill rate increase of over 5 this year.
No, Josh. No. That's an expense. I understand that. I'm talking revenue.
But that factors into the mill rate, Diane.
Yeah.
I'm sorry? Oh, I know that.
That factors into the mill rate. So if your revenues are decreased and your expenses are increased, it results in that 5 increase in the mill. So you need the what's realistic revenue, what's realistic, at a point where we're like this, maybe discretionary spending gets slashed like it did in a lot of budget lines. There's always a nice to have and a need to have. I think we're in a point where, departments should have what they need. not what they want right now.
Right, no wish list. I understand that.
Right.
Oh, I totally understand. I'm just saying about accountability, just
Yep.
to ensure that the departments are on board so that if we're putting in a different number than what they're projecting, that and maybe that's a whole different thing. Maybe that's a personnel thing. But I just get a little nervous when I see different numbers. That's all.
I wrote it down too. Board of Aldermen Finance monthly. So I'll take that to heart and give that a strong consideration to bring that around and again, bring some of that accountability. Again, if they're meeting with the mayor, they should have all the information prepared when we meet. If not, folks will, have to be accountable to, to the finance committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to take the plunge here? Any other guests?
Any discussion? Just to address the point that you made, Josh, that I have no doubt, and by the way, and you can go back and I make no allegations of impropriety in my letter. I'm talking about purely a process, managing a process. And we have different branches of government. And, if we wanted to, I have no doubt, I have some doubt now that Diane mentioned that there's department heads that didn't have those conversations, but let's take it for granted that the mayor is having active discussions with the department heads, which I would expect throughout the year and especially during budgeting process. We are not privy as the Board of Aldermen responsible for being that second body that's to look at this. I mean, why have the Board of Aldermen involved at all if we have to rely exclusively on the decision-making process of the mayor and the information that they receive, because we don't receive that same information. And I think if there's anything that I would love to see happen for the future of this city is to see that this process is taken seriously to the timeline of the charter, but also to award the authority of the Board of Aldermen to receive the commentary that the mayor receives, to be a part and to work collectively. That's the whole purpose of this board, and to have 14 members on it is that everybody's going to bring some kind of background and some sort of management and skills that ideally would be able to be insightful to the departments that run this city and be an opportunity for us to seek out those additional savings so we can genuinely achieve those savings. But without that opportunity for us to have the same conversations that the mayor had or to receive the commentary from the mayor, I mean, really this thing should be, the mayor has their conversations with the departments. We receive the same commentary and the same interview process that the mayor has. And then we get a justification of commentary from the mayor to say, this is what they requested, and this is how we figured out that we were actually able to get X, which was different than their original request. None of that has happened here, and zero. And we've had a couple of we have Rich Bashar at our disposal, but we don't receive it's haphazard, and it's at the whims of a parliamentary process and whether or not somebody got X minutes of time to talk or not. This stuff should be documented and written and submitted well in advance, so there's proper time to digest it and really take proper action on this. And so, I'd be really demoralized to see, if this board can't recognize that the way that this process is carried out is flawed right now, regardless of how you feel about the end product of the budget or not. This process is flawed, and we owe it to the taxpayers, we owe it to residents to have a proper budgeting process. And that's not what we have right now.
Anyone else? Last call.
Hey, Josh.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I have one more question, and Tony or someone maybe they can answer this for me. I noticed that in some of the departments, there's maintenance contracts. And some of them could be a little substantial. So my question is like IT has one, tax assessor has one, somebody else had one. Is there just one contract and it's split between all the departments, or does each department actually have their own maintenance contract? Does anyone know?
Diane, do you have a page for reference, please?
Oh yeah, like page 30. And page
If I can,
33.
I can answer some of that answer.
Okay, 30 and 33.
Many of the departments have their own contracts. Assessor has a contract for their software. They use Visions, Quality Data, and the GIS format. So they have their own annual maintenance contracts, as will the tax department and various other departments. The IT department has many contracts, including the phones, computer services, the networking services, and various other contracts. Police, they have their own contracts for their computer software and things that they have. Their radios is, I believe, in the EOC. It's for all the radios for the police, fire, and ambulance. So there are a number of different contracts, all for specific things, more specifically relating to the department that they're usually shown in.
Department specific. Okay, thank you.
And Rich, real quick, for like the phones as an example, they are just absorbed into the IT budget. They are not charged back to each individual department that has, phone line connectivity, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion to vote on this yet? Anybody? Motion by Cassetti,
Second.
second by Mammone. Ready to roll? Trish, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Josh, if we do a vote, we're gonna do a roll call vote. Is that right?
Yeah, I was just going to ask for that, Charlie.
Yes.
Gonna do a roll call vote. I just like to make a statement because we've had two motions. So I want to state that this may not be the perfect budget, but it's the budget the people requested. The people requested no more stress on their cost of living. And for better or worse, we provided that with this budget. And I'm going to vote for this budget.
All right,
Thank
Trish,
you.
let's roll.
All right, Alderman King.
Wait,
Yes.
excuse me.
Yes,
You have to vote on each line item, each department.
Never have done that before.
Yes, we
Always
did.
done it.
We
Always.
did.
By
Every
request.
line item, every department has to be voted on.
Could overrule it.
No, you can't. It's been done every year for the last 25 years.
No, it hasn't.
That's actually been done
Every
by vote.
department has to be
That is a
approved.
vote. That is a vote.
That's the
That
vote.
is a Board of Apportionment and Taxation vote, by
That's
line by
not
line.
true. When I was an alderman last time,
That's
When
when
I was
both
up there-
set the budget. They don't set the budget anymore. The
When we
aldermen
were-
set the budget.
when we were up to high school
No,
voting on the
actually,
budget,
vote
we
does
voted
set
by
the budget.
department.
The aldermen have to vote on changes. The
I
aldermen
have
vote
the
by
minutes from
2/3
last year's
majority
meeting.
on changes.
Well,
But there are
last
no
year's meeting,
changes.
every department was voted on.
Is that true, Richie?
In years past, they have voted from the summary page number 1 of the budget, on the expense line items one at a time. Whether that's a rule or not, I do not know, but history says that we have done that in the past.
We have.
And then at the end,
Actually,
they
that
will
was
vote on
that
the-
was done as I was chairman of both. We made sure that we voted line by line as both. Alderman, if you read the charter, it says 2/3 majority to make changes and approve. If there are no changes, the Board of Aldermen can vote on the budget as a whole. There is no stipulation. They
That's
are
not
not
what
the Board of
was
Apportionment and
last year.
Taxation.
Mr. President, just to clarify, there's nothing in the charter that establishes how the budget is to be approved, just that the Board of Aldermen
for
is
sure.
responsible for approving it. In the past, there may have been department by department votes, but that's to the pleasure of this board tonight how to handle it. Again, there's nothing in the charter mandating that it be done in a certain way, just that this body take the vote. Alderman King is correct. Any changes require a 2/3 vote, and we know that already. But in terms of how to approve the budget, that's up to this board.
Mr. President, 3 years ago, when I was alderman, we were up to high school voting on the budget, and we did it by department. And I can remember the year before that, we did it too. Why all of a sudden we're changing?
Yeah.
That's my question. I just want to know why we're changing all of a sudden. We've
Then
done
let's
it.
vote 30 lines and be done with it.
Dan,
we
I'm
can do it
talking.
line by line.
Dan, I'm talking, Dan. I'm talking.
Yeah, well, I know. I noticed.
You have your chance when you get the floor.
Joe,
I'm just asking you, why are we changing? That's all I want to know. Give me an answer and
I guess the
Let it
better
go.
question,
I think we need
my
a reason.
question would be, does
We need a
anybody have
reason.
a disagreement with any of the specific line items that you're not, that your vote is going to change one way or another?
Department.
If not, we're kind of saving a few hours, it seems.
Correct.
Yeah, I tried having a vote line item one time when Gene Sharkey and Stevie Bloom were running the board, and they didn't let me. They said no.
I'll be honest with you. I
I'm just,
agree
you know,
with
so it's like, which way is it? I mean, if the majority here wants to just vote for the whole budget in one shot, that's up to them.
Well, I kind of agree with Joe. If there's no disagreements on any departments, if everybody's willing to do it, and John says we could change it, but if that's not the case, we got to go by the whatever it says in the charter. I mean, you know, so
Vote.
Do we take a vote on how we
Let's
want
vote.
to vote?
Motion to forego individual lines.
Motion.
Not mine.
Make a motion.
Motion by who? Cassetti?
Second.
Second by Mammone. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One opposed. Rosalind, any abstentions? All right. So now I got to look at this print. I have to go get some glasses. We are voting on, what's the bottom line here? We're voting on the number of 57,673,556, which is the Board of Aldermen recommended 2021.
I knew you would. I have to.
So Josh, did I understand correct that we can make motions here in this conversation to request changes to the budget as presented?
So we
This
just
point?
voted.
No. At this point, we're voting on the budget.
Yes.
Earlier we did. We voted on three or four changes.
Is that what you said up top, upstairs?
So the total proposed budget number, 57,673.
Three.
My eyes are bugging out.
Okay.
556. With a 0% increase from last year and a mill rate 37.8. Roll call vote. Trish?
Alderman King,
Yes.
Alderman Stowe,
Yes.
Alderman Phipps,
No.
Alderman Roslin,
No.
Alderman Cassetti,
Aye.
Alderman Janetti,
no.
Alderman Alderwoman Stroman,
Yes.
Alderman Yauman,
Yes.
Alderman Rivers,
Yes.
Alderman Mammone,
Yes.
Alderman Stewart,
Yes.
Alderman Blackwell,
He muted. I know he's out there.
he's
On
on.
here.
Alderman Blackwell,
Blackwell's muted.
Alderman Blackwell can shoot me a text.
Blackwell. Yes or no on the budget, Blackwell?
Yes.
Okay. Is that him?
Yes.
Alderman DeLibero,
He's also muted.
Alderman DeLibero, unmute yourself, Frank. He is muted.
Is muted.
He's muted. He's there.
There he is.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yes, I'm in favor.
All right. So the vote is 10 yes and 3 no.
Mr. President, can I have a word, please?
Depends. Go ahead, Joe.
I just want to say that I am in favor of not raising the taxes. And I think everybody did a hard, worked hard on this budget. I just did not believe in the total process of it. And I voted no because I don't know if we did it the right way. That's my reasoning for voting no. It's not because I wanted taxes raised, and I want that to go on record. I did not want taxes raised. I'm happy with that part of the budget.
Thank you,
So
Joe.
I want that.
Don't worry, Joe, we'll smudge that.
Thanks, Charlie.
All right, next item is item 7, establishment of the mill rate for 2020, 2021. So the mill rate, as per this budget, will remain unchanged and is proposed at 37.80 mils.
Motion to keep the mill rate at 37.80.
Motion
for
by
this
Mammone,
budget cycle.
Oh, yes, for this one.
Second,
second by
Yalman.
Yauman. All
Josh,
in
can I have a roll call vote on this as well, please?
Yes.
Okay, Alderman King,
Yes.
Alderman Stowe,
Yes.
Alderman Phipps,
Yes.
Alderman Raslin,
Yes.
Alderman Cassetti,
Yes.
Alderman Janetti,
Yes.
Alderwoman Stroman,
Yes.
Alderman Yauman,
Yes.
Alderman Rivers,
Yes.
Alderman Mammone,
Yes.
Alderman Short,
Yes.
Alderman Blackwell,
Yes.
Alderman DeLibero,
Yes.
13 in favor.
Thank you. Motion passes. Our mill rate will be 37.80. I'll leave it to the powers to be to take care of that from that point on. All right, so we have, and thank you again to all you that were both on the committee, which was half of the aldermen, and also those of you that were not on the committee that took a vested interest in this and attended meetings, asked questions and whatnot. So I do appreciate that.
Josh, I think you have to approve the revenue side as well.
All right, I can't even read this, but let's see. Revenue side is.
It should be the same, but you still have, I think you have to vote it both ways.
The same number, you mean?
It's not even.
I think we're just voting on the total budget, which is
No,
going
I
to.
think Beth's right. I think you got to vote on that.
So
You can't just spend it, you gotta bring it in too.
Oh, so I see what you're saying. Okay, so you're voting on a revenue of 57,673. Same number.
556.
Yeah, it's gotta be the same.
I can't read it. 556.
Yeah.
All right. Can we
Motion.
quickly do this then as well, Trish?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mammone,
I'll second, yeah.
I'll second.
second by
Second it.
second by King.
Dave.
All right, so this is voting on the revenue side, which is equal to, and the number $57,673,556. Roll call.
Alderman King,
Yes.
Alderman Stowe,
Yes.
Alderman Phipps,
Yes.
Alderman Raslin,
No.
Alderman Cassetti,
Yes.
Alderman Janetti,
Yes.
Alderwoman Stroman,
Yes.
Alderman Yauman,
Yes.
Alderman Rivers,
Yes.
Alderman Mammone,
Yes.
Alderman Short,
Yes.
Alderman Blackwell,
Yes.
Alderman DeLibero,
Yes.
12 in favor and 1 opposed.
Thank you. The motion passes. All right. My comment from earlier stands. We move on to number 8. We have 2 resolutions. Resolution 8A and Resolution 8B. So Resolution 8A, we've spoken about this before. This is the resolution for a non-lapsing education fund. Joe,
I'll take it. Yeah.
you want to take this and
Sure.
highlight the
Thank you, Mr.
differences from last time?
Yep. We saw this once before back in May. We did have a meeting with the superintendent as well as the president of the Board of Education and discuss sort of the details and sort of work this out. So this is sort of the creation from that. The one thing that I will ask to be added to this is a paragraph 4 where we had discussed a sunset, where we wanted to make sure that this was something that was going to sunset as of June 30th, 2024. Give this 4 years, see how it works out, and if it works well, the Board of Aldermen can redo it again. And I just want the language in paragraph 4 to be clear that any money that is allocated by the Board of Ed into the non-lapsing account remains Board of Education money, regardless of whether or not this is reauthorized by the Board of Aldermen. So we're gonna try this on a 4-year basis. If it works, it'll probably become a permanent thing. But what we just talked about was giving it that 4-year trial period and making clear that any money that's allocated from the Board of Ed and approved by us to be placed into the non-lapsing account is Board of Ed money. It is not city money, just to be clear about that. So that would be the one addition, John, just so you're aware.
Well, and the other, that one addition and the one change from the last time we saw this was the percentages actually are higher than what we had originally discussed.
Right.
I believe we discussed 1% and it's actually 2%, correct?
Yeah, John was able to clarify. There was a question as to whether or not the statute had actually changed to allow for that 2%. The statute actually it did get passed because it was a little bit unclear based on what I had found and what we were talking about. But yes, it is 2% maximum, I believe, of 4%. But it is a 2% per year based on the last fiscal year budget for the Board of Ed. So I'm very much in favor of this. I know this was a point of discussion. I think this is something that we should all support. I think it's a very good idea. It allows the Board of Ed to any savings to be put aside, to be put towards technology and possibly capital improvements for the schools, rather than having to come back and ask for bonding and things like that. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I ask all of you guys to support it.
Joe, what was the cap, please?
There's the ability to put a cap on there. There is no cap on this. The cap is 2% per year. That was the ultimate cap. There is the ability to put a cap on the size of it, but because we were doing it with a 4-year sunset, Tony, and a maximum of 2 years, I guess you could assume that there's basically an 8% cap on this. And we get to choose. We choose every single year. We have to authorize. The Board of Ed says, "Hey, we have this money." It comes to the Board of Aldermen. We have to allocate it into the non-lapsing account annually at the end of the budget cycle.
Okay.
So
And obviously
that's kind of how the process works.
And obviously any advances from the Board of Ed to this does not affect the MBR, correct?
That's correct. It's Board of Ed money being put aside for Board of Ed.
Board of Ed. Got it.
Yep.
Yep. Perfect. I like this too.
Yep. And I want to thank Alderman Yaman for sort of leading the charge on this, coordinating a meeting with myself, Chris Phipps, superintendent, and their Board of Ed Finance Committee. So we had a lot of discussion about this. I think it's a very good positive step forward, and we ask that you support this.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make the motion to push this forward, Jeff.
Motion by Mammone, second by Rivers.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Question on
Aye.
the question, sir.
Aye.
No, sorry. Go ahead. Yes,
Listen,
Bill, question.
Joe, Mr. Yalman said he wants to have item number 4 on the motion.
Correct. Yeah, I was just going to say that, Bill. Is that same thing, Tony? If you can amend to include the language for number 4, being that this would sunset as of June 30th, 2024, unless reauthorized by the Board of Aldermen, and that any monies placed into the account by the Board of Education would stay Board of Education monies.
I'll modify my motion to include everything Joe just said.
I second it.
Thanks, Camera Pants. All right, so
Thanks, Trish.
motion by Mammone again, second by Rivers. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? All right, unanimous. Thank you, guys.
Thank
It is
you,
a great
everybody.
step forward for us.
Gotcha.
All right, resolution number 2 is the fair housing resolution. This is a boilerplate document. As you recall, last month or 2 months ago, we voted on the fair housing officer, and this is just a document that's pulled off that the chief executive officer of the city of Ansonia and/or his designated representative, which we voted on, I think it was 2 months ago, is responsible for responding to and assisting any person who alleges to be the victim of a legal discriminatory housing practice in the city of Ansonia, et cetera, and it'll be signed by the mayor. So I don't think there's anything controversial about this, but we can discuss it further or get clarification if anyone wants. Like I said, this is a boilerplate document. Motion to accept?
Question?
Motion to accept.
All he got is a question.
A motion to accept by Cassetti, second by somebody, and then we'll have
I'll
discussion.
second.
Second by Yaman. Okay, question Phipps first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got it. Why is it before us? Is this something that goes on all the time, or is this something new?
Bill, you'll quickly learn that we have to approve pretty much everything. So a lot of stuff is just we can't go ahead with some grants unless we as aldermen approve
Right.
a resolution. So a lot of these things are just kind of standard issue, and that's why we get a bunch of these every month. I think 2 months ago we had about 4 of them, and they were all related to being able to apply for grants.
And
This one's related to the fair housing, so that's why it's before us.
All right. Thank you.
Chicago, did you have a question as well?
No.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, thank you, guys. Moving on, we have, dear God, I hope we still have 12 people. We have the ordinance number 9. This is the item that vaporized last meeting. People started losing their connections.
I got a quick.
This is the resolution for the ordinance, this is the ordinance for the establishment of the Parks and Recreation Board. Can we verify first that we have 12 aldermen before I go any further?
Yes. Yes.
Just counted 13.
13, even better.
13.
All right, so this is the ordinance. I think there was going to be, well, actually, no, this is the amended. Remember we talked at the last meeting regarding adding 1 member from the inland wetlands. That was Alderman Yaman. That's on the current version. So the board organization would now be would be the superintendent of public works, someone from Public Works Commission, the recreation director, 1 person from inland wetlands, and then 3 members from the community. So that was amended from the last meeting. Good God, Frank, turn your...
Frank.
Yeah. So that was amended, and that's before us now to establish this ordinance.
I'll just add that this is something that ordinance has been talking about for a while. It was discussed with the Recreation Board. I know Alderman Rivers has worked on this a lot as well. So I'd ask everybody to support this.
I make the motion.
Motion by Rivers, second by
Mammone.
Mammone.
Question?
Yes, question by Alderman Phipps.
Me. I was surprised to see the wetlands as a member of the commission. I don't quite understand the logic behind that. Usually people on wetlands don't want you playing.
Because of the condition of the parks, Bill.
That's Bill, and because they're going to be, I asked that it be, I discussed this at the last meeting because one of the thoughts was because they're going to be dealing with the parks and the recreations, we want to make sure that there's no water courses, and anybody from inland and wetlands would be able to identify that in our parks, and any land that is going to be, looked at by the Parks and Recreation Commission for public use should be able to identify that. So that's why I asked that person be included.
I get you. And the other thing that I spotted was that this commission washes itself out after 5 years. the appointed ones, right? There's no staggered appointments. I don't know if it matters or not, but I just noticed it.
It's a start.
Won't hurt because you still have 3 sitting members, but
Right. Any other comments on this?
Just a question. This was Joe that put this together?
It was the ordinance committee. Yeah, Barry.
Is Mike and Jeff in favor of this?
Jeff was, yes. Mike's been consulted about it. He also thought he was in favor of it, yeah.
For a long time, they've been wanting this. Jeff, actually, for a long time.
And most of the members of the current Recreation Commission over the years have been in support of some committee that has the ability to help with facilities. And that's kind of where this came from.
Great, thanks.
Anything else?
Moving on.
All right.
Hey, Josh.
Yes.
Dave Blackwell.
Yep.
Is anybody from the Board of Ed on that commission, like the athletic director?
Could be, but not by ordinance, but it could be one of the members.
Yeah, I would think that they would have some interest in the input at some point.
Well, this would just specifically be for the city parks, but yeah, Dave, you're right, I think.
Any other comments? All right, so we have the motion, correct, Trish? And we have a second? All right, on the ordinance, do we need a roll call vote or just a yay, nay, given that we needed the 12 votes?
As long as you get to 12, I think you can do
Yeah,
it.
whether it passes or
Okay.
no.
Yeah, you're okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, anyone? Abstentions? All right, so it passes unanimously, 13-0. Trish?
Correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. There's one item listed under new business, the facade loan application for D. Giovanni's. I'm gonna have to defer to John on this. I didn't see anything in the packet on this.
Yeah, I didn't either.
We never got it.
Yeah, okay, that's mine. They had to make a revision to the application, so I apologize. You don't need to consider it at this meeting. Thank you.
Thank
All right.
God.
You want us to table it to the next regular meeting, Sheila?
Yes, great, thank you.
Motion to table.
Second.
First.
Who was the first?
Mammone and Cassetti.
Mammone Cassetti. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Opposed?
Thank you.
Abstained? Thank you. All right. We have no other items. We just have our favorite part of the night. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Cassetti. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Not a lot of voting no on this one anyways. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, gentlemen and
Good
ladies.
night, guys.
Good night.